In Nigeria addresses media. Crisis looms as National Assembly battles Buhari over source of next year's election funding. In international news, Trump threatens to pull U.S. out of World Trade Organization over unfair treatment. And in sports, Super Eagles coach Gernot Rohr names Nigeria's squad for Seychelles.
This is ANN News.
President Muhammadu Buhari and German Chancellor Angela Merkel have addressed journalists after they met behind closed doors in Abuja on Friday. Merkel's visit to Nigeria is part of a tour of West African countries. She says her country is keen to provide more legal pathways to Nigerians for migration to Europe, and that human trafficking and illegal migration could only be tackled if economic opportunities were provided for young people. Merkel made the remarks during a joint press conference with President Buhari. Her trip is aimed at increasing economic relations between West Africa and Germany. It is also to work towards reducing the flow of illegal migrants to Europe. The Chancellor is here with nearly a dozen German CEOs to help promote business ties. Merkel's visit came hours after British Prime Minister Theresa May's meeting with Buhari in the State House on Wednesday. There are indications fresh crisis looms between the Presidency and National Assembly over the estimate of this year's 9 trillion naira budget. The National Assembly overruled on Thursday President Muhammadu Buhari's recommended virement of 143 billion naira for next year's elections from the 944 billion naira service-wide votes provisions in the budget. The lawmakers approved from 578 billion naira special votes in the general budget, reducing next year's INEC budget by 200 million naira. Chairman of Joint Committee on Independent National Electoral Commission INEC, Suleiman Nazif, asked the President to source the fund from the service-wide vote to avoid increase in the size of this year's expenditure framework. Service-wide vote is a special intervention fund for the Presidency to use in special projects at its discretion. The ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, has opted for a combination of both the direct and indirect primary election as the mode of choosing candidates for next year's general election. APC's National Executive Committee says the party will use direct primary election in choosing its presidential candidate and indirect primaries for other positions. Reports say more than 30 states opted for indirect voting. Direct primary allows voters decide their party's candidate, while indirect primary allows voters elect delegates who choose the party's candidates. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari, after attending his party's 6th NEC meeting in Abuja on Thursday, will depart for China on Friday to participate in the 7th summit of the Forum in China-Africa Cooperation, scheduled to hold early next month in Beijing. Buhari's media assistant says he will meet with the Nigerian community in China at the embassy and is expected to hold bilateral meetings with China's President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Li Keqiang. Senate President Bukola Saraki declared to run for president. Now, the Not Too Young to Run movement has condemned the Senate President Saraki for usurping the town hall meeting of the movement held in Abuja on Thursday to declare his presidential ambition. The organization issued a statement saying Saraki basically hijacked their town hall meeting to declare his intention to run for the office of the president in next year's election. The movement says it dissociates itself from the Senate President's declaration. Meanwhile, Saraki's office has issued a statement that the Senate President did not intend to put the group or its leadership in a, quote, invidious position, and that he made his declaration in good faith and as a symbolic act to encourage young PDP aspirants. Sokoto State Governor Aminu Tambuwal has picked the presidential nomination form of the People's Democratic Party (PDP). Tambuwal is one of the governors who defected from the ruling All Progressives Congress (APC) to the PDP. This is coming weeks after he declared that he had been under pressure to join next year's presidential race. Tambuwal said he is not discouraged by whatever may come up as a challenge from current administration. Telecommunications firm MTN has refuted on Thursday claims by the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) on its illegally repatriated $8 billion from its Nigerian operations to offshore investors in collusion with 4 Nigerian banks. CBN said MTN's alleged repatriation violated its rule. MTN's corporate affairs manager Funsho Aina said in a statement, quote, MTN Nigeria strongly refutes these allegations and claims. No dividends have been declared or paid by MTN Nigeria other than pursuant to CCIs issued by our bankers and with the approval of CBN as required by law, end quote. He added that the issue surrounding certificates of capital importation CCIs is already subject of thorough inquiry by Nigerian Senate. Ebonyi State government said it had seized more than 300 bags of poisonous rice imported into the state from other parts of the country on Thursday. Environment Commissioner Donatus Njoku said a member of the staff of the ministry noticed at a market that one of the millers was mixing the rice with bags written not for human consumption with other rice and rebagging them. Njoku said the matter was reported to the State Executive Council, which ordered the temporary closure of the market and also set up a committee to investigate the matter. The Standards Organization of Nigeria, SON, has warned importers of school uniforms that a cancer-causing agent dyes has been detected in some school uniforms in Hong Kong, Southeast Asia. The agency said the tested samples of the agent was well above the maximum allowed by any standard. It advised importers of school uniform materials in Nigeria to ensure they undergo process of conformity assessment of such materials through the SON Offshore Conformity Assessment Program, SONCAP, before importing them. SON DG Osita Boloma said dyes has been banned in Europe, Japan and other parts of the world prior to the findings. More than 500 youths from 4 oil communities in Awara Court area in Ohaji Egbema local government area in Imo State blocked the gate to Seplat Oil Company, demanding that the company signs Global Memorandum of Understanding GMOU with them. The protest leader Emmanuel Ugoji said they were angered after noticing the oil firm mobilized manpower into their land without interfacing with them, insisting that Seplat should demobilize from their land before any discussion. Ugoji accused the government official under Rocha Sokorochas for allegedly backing the oil company and claiming to be representing the interest of the community. The National Emergency Management Agency has warned that water level in River Niger is almost at 9 centimeters and will ultimately lead to flooding in Lokoja and other 8 local government areas in Kogi State. NEMA head of operations in Abuja and Kogi, Bitrus Samuel, said the flood might come any time from now, urging the government to evacuate those living on the banks of River Niger. Samuel said the impending flood was due to intensity and duration of high falls currently witnessed in different parts of the country. He said the agency and other stakeholders are yet to determine the exact time and day the flood would hit Lokoja. There was confusion on Thursday following the proposed partial closure of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway for 18 weeks from early next month to early next year for repairs by Julius Berger Nigeria PLC. Federal Road Safety Corps FRC in Ogun State refuted the planned closure. It says it will only divert traffic on the road temporarily, and FRC Route Commander Florence Okpe said there will be temporary traffic diversion on the Shagamu-bound traffic along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway from kilometer 26 around 200 meters from the existing RCCG Car Park C U-turn to kilometer 28. Coming up, major events around Africa, and later, Trump threatens U.S. withdrawal from World Trade Organization.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, Lindsay, alright? Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Let's see what's happening across Africa. The Algerian government said on Thursday cholera outbreak that struck the country earlier this month is now confined to one area. It also says the number of hospital patients is falling. The outbreak in early August was Algeria's first in 2 decades, hitting 6 cities, including the capital Algiers. The number of people newly hospitalized with suspected cholera has fallen by half in the past 3 days, and 61% of the approximately 200 patients hospitalized since the outbreak began have returned home. Libyan Health Ministry said on Thursday at least 27 persons have been killed and 100 wounded in several days of fighting between rival militias near the capital Tripoli. The clashes broke out on Monday in suburbs south of Tripoli and continued into Wednesday evening after a truce collapsed despite an appeal for peace by the United Nations. A ceasefire agreement was announced by officials from western areas on Thursday to end clashes, but it was unclear whether the two rival camps would respect it. Leader of the internationally recognized Government of National Accord GNA, Faiz al-Sarraj, has called on forces from western and central regions of Libya to ensure the rivals adhere to the ceasefire. UN Security Council extended for a year a general sanctions regime against Mali, but stopped short of imposing individual sanctions against leaders of armed groups accused of violating a 2015 peace accord. France's Deputy UN Ambassador Anne Guenguen said the progress made remains insufficient. Her British counterpart Jonathan Allen stressed the need to see progress from all parties. Guenguen said France is proposing that mid-level leaders of armed groups who undermine the peace accord through criminal or terrorist activities also be sanctioned. It was unclear whether Russia and China support such individual sanctions. Both had expressed reservations a year ago when the general sanctions regime was created at France's initiative. Tunisia's Energy Minister Khalid Gado and 4 other senior officials have been dismissed over accusations of corruption. The move has taken Tunisia's political scene by surprise. Tunisian Prime Minister Youssef Chaid has ordered an investigation into the allegations while saying that the Ministries of Energy and Industry will now be merged. A government spokesman said more details will be made public later. A dozen NGOs said on Thursday 11 million people are in urgent need of humanitarian aid in the Lake Chad region following 9 years of Boko Haram violence. The groups issued a plea for emergency aid to help communities surrounding the lake, which lies across Chad, Nigeria, Niger, and Cameroon ahead of a major donor conference about the crisis in Berlin next week. The statement signed by the NGO says insurgency and military operations across the 4 countries have displaced almost 2.5 million people and left 5 million people food insecure, while significantly reducing economic activity. The United Nations estimate it needs $1.6 billion to offer life-saving aid for the region in coordination with humanitarian actors. A frontline state in the Sahel's fight against jihadists, Mauritania goes to the polls on Saturday for triple elections that will test head of state Mohamed Ould Abdel Aziz's record 7 months before a presidential vote. A record of 98 parties will take part in legislative, regional and local elections for which more than 1.5 million citizens are registered. Potential runoff elections will take place in mid-September. 61-year-old Aziz came to power in a coup in 2008. He was elected president in 2009 and again in 2014. He has been frequently accused by opposition figures and NGOs of rights abuses, including the arrest of a former senator and the secretive detention of a blogger accused of blasphemy. He has said several times he will not seek a third mandate that would violate the constitution of this Western African country. But statements by his ministers and supporters have allowed opposition suspicions to flourish. A lackluster campaign ends on Friday after rallies that drew sparse attendance, despite a decision by the opposition to end a long electoral boycott. France says it has proposed that members of armed groups in Mali delaying implementation of a 2015 peace agreement be put on a UN sanctions blacklist. France's Deputy UN Ambassador Anne Guenguen told the Security Council on Thursday that the time for warnings is over. France has submitted the names of individuals to the UN Security Council committee set up last year to deal with Mali sanctions. Guenguen said a new report by the committee's panel of experts shed light on some individuals associated with armed groups who are undermining the 2015 peace agreement through their links with criminal or terrorist activity. When we return, international news. Trump says U.S. may get out of the World Trade Organization. And later, in sports, Raw names Nigeria's squad against the Shells.
You are watching ANN.
MTN gives 2,000% bonus for reactivating your MTN SIM. That's right. If you haven't used your MTN SIM for 45 days or more, recharge now and get 2,000% bonus. That's right, 2,000% bonus for your first recharge of every month.
While the world sleeps, ANN News stays awake. News takes no time off. We are awake so you can sleep. We report the stories that keep you up to date, events that affect your day, your week, month, and experiences. We scour the world, bringing it to your living room. Watch ANN News in a truly African spirit. Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the foreign scene, President Donald Trump has threatened to withdraw the United States from the World Trade Organization. He says the body too often rules against the United States and that WTO was set up to benefit everybody except the U.S. Trump says, quote, "If they don't shape up, I would withdraw from the WTO. The World Trade Organization was established to provide rules for global trade and resolve disputes among countries." Trump's threat highlights the conflict between his protectionist trade policies and the open trade system that the WTO oversees. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has also accused the WTO of interfering with U.S. sovereignty. Argentina has raised its interest rate to 60% to prop up the country's floundering currency. The country's central bank says the ongoing economic crisis and a move to counter the risk of greater impact on local inflation necessitated the hike. The country has also applied for, and the International Monetary Fund has agreed to provide a bailout fund of $50 billion. In return, Argentina has decided to reduce its budget deficit to more than 2% this year. The Argentinian peso has dropped more than 7% against the dollar after the request. The Catholic Church in Australia has rejected a landmark inquiry's recommendation that priests should be forced to report sexual abuse disclosed during confession. The 5-year inquiry found tens of thousands of children had suffered abuse in Australian institutions, and the Catholic Church had the most cases. Australian Catholic bishops had said at their conference that breaking the seal of confession was contrary to the faith and inimical to religious liberty. The church leaders said they would explore other proposals, including asking the Vatican to relax rules on celibacy. The United Nations is alarmed by reports of the mass detention of Uyghurs in China. The UN committee heard reports that 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in western Xinjiang province were held in re-education camps. Beijing has denied the allegations, but it said it is true in the case of some religious extremists. China says Islamist militants and separatists are responsible for unrest in the region. Brexit is still a thorny issue in Europe, as there are unresolved issues that seem to point to an acrimonious UK exit from the Union. Although negotiators claim progress in the talks, they say there is no breakthrough yet on the issue of the Irish border. Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab has expressed dogged optimism that there will be results after his discussions at the European Union headquarters in Brussels. Haggling continues over intellectual property, and EU negotiator Michael Barnier will be meeting for another 6 hours meeting to deliberate on all these issues, data protection, and how the role of the European Court of Justice will be defined in the case of a non-member United Kingdom. Both sides are hoping to agree on a diverse deal and a statement on future trading relations before the summit of EU leaders in October. March the 29th next year is the D-Day for the UK to leave the European Union. Up next, sports. Nigerian name scored against Seychelles. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand, that's Palasa phone.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sports, Super Eagles technical advisor Gernot Rohr has announced a 24-person Nigerian team of 3 goalkeepers, 8 defenders, 6 midfielders and 7 forwards for the 2019 Nations Cup qualifier against the Seychelles, whom the Super Eagles will play next week. Captain Merkel has said Rohr's invitation to on-loan Arsenal midfielder Kelechi Nwakali is a step in the right direction. Nwakali is on loan at Porto B. He had impressed Rohr in a friendly game against Atletico Madrid, where he scored a goal. Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyema has assured the Football Intermediaries Association of Nigeria that football players do not pass through avoidable difficulties while trying to sort their traveling document in search of greener pastures. The association is currently dealing with issues bordering on menace of football players trafficking, identifying bona fide members of the association, recommendation of Football Intermediaries Association members to embassies within and outside Nigeria, and securing visas. The Football Association says a case of 10 Nigerians trapped in Cape Verde was brought to the front burner after being duped by a fake agent. The Foreign Affairs Minister has promised to take steps as quickly as possible. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Rotimi Akintunde. Have a great evening.